King Merenptah, sometimes called Merenptah. He was the 13th son of Ramesses II. He ruled Egypt for 10 years, but we believe that he had a co-regency with his father for 12 years before Ramesses II died. He was the fourth king of the 19th dynasty. The estimated year of his reign is 1213 BCE to 1203 BCE. This is an interesting period of time in the ancient world because the Bronze Age is now in decline and people are moving around. Large groups are moving around. In year 5, there was an attack on Egypt by the Libyans and the so-called Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples were described by the Egyptians as being a confederacy of different peoples. They were called the Ekwesh, the Sherdan, the Shekelesh. So these seemed to be a collection of pirates, in my opinion, each coming from different parts of the Mediterranean. Merenptah was successful, or his generals and his admirals were successful at defeating this incursion. They celebrated the event. He certainly celebrated the event by putting an inscription on the 6th pylon for year 5 and this attack by the Sea Peoples and the Libyans. He had a confrontation with a group of people, or a tribe or people called Israel. And he says that he decimates these people and their seed is no more. And it's recorded on the stele, which used to be in the old Cairo Museum. It might be in the new Cairo Museum now. This stele with this description of these people, Israel, I'm not keen on mysteries. I stay away from them. I stay away from controversial debates on the chronology and dates and things like that. I just think that sometimes it can grind you down and take you away from the primary objective of an archaeologist, which is to interpret the raw data. And I don't like getting involved with hypotheses and theories, because unless there's raw data, I'm really not interested. But however, this stele is quite interesting. Now, from this time, Merenptah's time, he's now described as a pharaoh, which means great house in Hebrew. This is how the Hebrews described the leaders of Egypt. That term was never used by previous rulers of Egypt. They called themselves the Merneptah, the Lord of Two Lands, or His Majesty, or from the Great House. But it wasn't used as a term to describe kings or rulers of Egypt before Merenptah. So it's interesting that this pops up at that time. Let's say Israel was in Egypt. Let's say that the Bible's correct and that the people came in with Joseph during the Middle Kingdom, and then during this New Kingdom, 19th dynasty, they decided to leave. Well, there's a lot of evidence that the Mediterranean world was changing, the Near Eastern world was changing, and this may have been their opportunity, with maybe a massive climate change going on, that they describe certain disasters as being the act of their one God and the device for their expulsion from Egypt. So I'm talking about the Exodus now. It's just highly unusual for a king of Egypt to decimate any people. Previously, the only king who did this was Amenhotep II. So when kings use military force against people, they took away their children as hostages. They took away their goods. They didn't tend to kill many people or decimate them, as is described on the stele. So let's say that this these people, this tribe of Israel, did leave Egypt, and that they did ascribe the 3 curses by their one God on the Egyptian people. That may have been a motive for Merenptah to go to Canaan and utterly destroy them. Let's say the survivors of the massacre then go off into the Sinai, into the wilderness for 40 years, and try and repopulate their tribe if they've been decimated by the armies of the Pharaoh. They're carrying this history orally. If they were living in Egypt for around about 800 years, be roughly about 800 years, and they left Egypt, and they were doing manual work, there wouldn't be many scholars in their ranks. So they would have carried this history orally before it was written down. So how many generations did that story pass through before it was eventually written down? So let's say a few generations have passed, and they're now going to write down this story. The story has been passed through several generations, and they misinterpret the term Pharaoh as being Ramesses, because Ramesses and Pharaoh, Great House, would go together from the point of view that he ruled Egypt for 66 years, that he at least saw 2 or 3 different generations of Egyptians, and certainly Israelites if they were in Egypt. But I think the Exodus happened during the reign of Merenptah, and that he persecuted the Israelites in Canaan to decimate them. So that's why, if there was an Exodus, which the Israelites said there were in the Old Testament, then I think it would have happened during this time, and not during the reign of Ramesses II. In the reign of Merenptah, as I mentioned before, the Bronze Age is collapsing. The Hittites are struggling to control the landscape in modern-day Turkey. The Babylons are in decline, and Mycenae in Greece is in decline as well. The only survivors during this collapse is the Assyrian people and the Egyptians, and they're recovering because of good organisation. The rest of the Mediterranean is in upheaval. Disaster on Crete has happened possibly during this time. Santorini may have exploded during this time. It's unclear, but people tend to move because of warfare, disease, and lack of food. So those are the 3 reasons for decline. And this is a massive decline. It's not just a small population in a certain area. It seems to be the whole of the Mediterranean basin and the Near East, which is Assyria and Babylon. Merenptah the builder, what did he build? Well, he put that inscription on the 6th pylon about the battle with the Sea Peoples and the Libyans. He commissioned the stele to commemorate the decimation of Israel. And then he finished off one of his grandfather's projects, Seti I, who started building an Nazarian at the back of his temple at Abydos. Now this was an open court below ground level, with the intention was to have a dummy sarcophagus, and it was a recreation of the primeval mound coming out of the waters of chaos. So it was designed to flood with any rainfall or any groundwater rising from below the earth. Now, if you have a look at a map of it, has got underground tunnels, and those underground tunnels are covered in text of the underworld text and the Book of Gates and the Book of Caverns, with all the secret spells you needed to get through each gate and protect yourself against the monsters. Remember there's a picture of a falcon god with two knives who goes through the underworld, cutting off the head of the dead. You needed a set of baboons to go in front of your boat as it was being dragged through the underworld to again cut off snakes and kill crocodiles and that sort of thing. So all those texts are in those underground chambers. Sometimes you see the odd rat in there. I've seen a few rats over the years as I've tried to read the text. It's always covered in spiders, and you get the odd snake, but they don't tend to bite you much. But it is a magical place to go and read text, that's for sure. Now, if you are enjoying these videos, I'd be grateful if you could press the subscribe button and encourage people you know to come and visit the channel and view these videos. If you've got any comments you'd like to leave or suggestions, please could you leave them in the comments box. It's difficult for me to access comments, but I do like to read them. It gives me some ideas. And stay safe, get a haircut like I did, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.